Modern washing machines are a total scam. You're paying $1,400 for a touchscreen computer with a lid lock sensor that traps your clothes the day the warranty ends. In 22 years fixing appliances, I've seen more men cry over a control board than anything else. Stop chasing features, look at engineering. 3 washers stand out, machines you buy once and run for life. The best washer isn't the one with an app or a sensor cycle. It starts the moment you press the knob, every time, for decades. Today I'm counting down the 3 most bulletproof washers built. Let's begin. Number 3 is the Kenmore 80 series, built by Whirlpool through the 1980s and 90s. Some of you only trust front loaders now. Hear me out anyway. I had a customer, a retired school teacher named Linda, who bought a used 80 series for $150 back in 2008. Her neighbors laughed at her. No digital display, nothing fancy. 18 years later, Linda still runs it twice a week without giving it a second thought. Her total repair bill, outside upkeep, has come to $40 across nearly 2 decades of family laundry. The stigma here is that it's just a basic machine. No steam cycle, no app, no sensors. It won't text you when the wash is done. But if you're washing towels, jeans, and bed sheets week after week, it's all the machine you'll ever need. The secret is the direct drive motor, bolted straight to a simple gearbox transmission with almost nothing electronic between the dial and the drum. This setup is legendary because it was built heavy, sized for industrial duty cycles instead of minimum manufacturing cost. Whirlpool over-engineered this platform so thoroughly that 25 to 30 years of service is considered normal, with even longer lifespans realistic given basic maintenance. This was the last era when appliance makers built to an actual standard, not a price point. Everything from the porcelain tub to the agitator shaft feels heavier than anything sold in stores today. You're not simply buying a washer. You're buying a mechanism engineered to handle 3 full decades of non-stop family laundry. Here's the insider check. These machines rely on a rubber and spring suspension system instead of electronic shock sensors. Over time, those suspension springs can sag or snap, but replacing all 4 costs about $60 in parts and roughly an hour of labor. It's a known wear item, not a design flaw. Also listen for any clunking noise during the spin cycle. That sound is almost always the drive belt, a $15 part anyone with basic tools can swap in under 20 minutes. If the tub spins true and the belt is properly and correctly tensioned, you found a machine that will quietly outlast the dryer sitting right next to it. You can typically find a clean working unit at an estate sale or local listings for well under $100, and it will genuinely be the last washer you ever need to buy. But if you want something even tougher, built for decades of heavy-duty cycling under real daily abuse, you need to see this next Whirlpool. It represents the absolute peak of pre-electronic simplicity. Number 2 is the Whirlpool Direct Drive, what old-timers call the belt drive, built from the late 1980s through the early 2000s. A guy named Carl came into my shop last month hauling in a 1994 model he's owned since he bought his very first house. He has run 3 kids' worth of daily laundry through that machine, and the motor itself has never once been opened, inspected, or touched by a technician. Not once in over 30 years of continuous use. Meanwhile, families with brand new LG washers are stuck waiting weeks for a single back-ordered control board. Carl, on the other hand, runs 5 loads a Saturday without giving it a second thought. The stigma here is strictly about age. People see a washer covered in knobs and dials and immediately assume it belongs in a landfill, not a modern laundry room. But here's the honest repairman's truth. This washer was engineered back when serviceability in the field was the actual top priority. Every part bolts on using completely standard hardware you already own. There's no mainboard buried inside, no fragile ribbon cable, and no proprietary diagnostic tool required just to figure out what's wrong. You can repair nearly anything on this entire machine using a basic socket set and one quiet Saturday afternoon. In a world where modern washers can require swapping an entire electronics module just because one cheap sensor failed, the Whirlpool Direct Drive remains a genuine mechanic's dream machine. Here's the layman's check. You specifically want the version with the heavy cast aluminum transmission, not the later, cheaper plastic cased redesign. It isn't flashy, but it delivers more raw torque than most modern direct drive motors ever will, and it feels closer to an industrial workhorse than a typical home appliance. Check the agitator dogs, the small plastic teeth tucked inside the agitator base that engage the transmission below. If the machine fills and drains normally, but the agitator refuses to turn, that's a $20 part kit and roughly a 30-minute fix. Also inspect the inlet valve screens for mineral buildup, especially if your home runs on well water. Buy this entire machine for around $75, spend another $50 getting it perfectly dialed in, and end up owning an appliance still running when your own kids eventually have kids of their own. The Whirlpool is a genuine legend, but my number one pick is a machine that literally forced every competitor to redesign their entire lineup because it was simply too reliable to compete against. And finally, number one is the Maytag Dependable Care, built from the late 1970s through the 1990s, what we call the gold standard in my shop. My client Arthur bought his Dependable Care brand new back in 1985. A contractor with 5 kids, he's run it almost daily for 4 decades straight, hauling it from one job site house to the next without ever once thinking about replacing it. That machine has washed drywall dust and concrete grit out of work clothes every single week for 40 years, season after season, with barely a complaint. The only major repair he's ever had, a water pump and a set of supply hoses, both swapped out in a single afternoon for less than $100 total. The stigma is that it's just an old beige box with a dial that looks like it belongs in a museum, not a modern laundry room. But let's be honest with ourselves. Are you buying a washer for the soft touch display or because the motor underneath is genuinely immortal? This machine runs a Maytag-built direct drive motor mounted straight to the transmission with no belt to slip and nothing to stretch out over time. It's one of the most reliable motor and transmission pairings ever put into a residential washing machine. Full stop. What makes it special isn't fancy engineering. It's the complete absence of anything that can fail. There's no rubber belt connecting motor to drum, which means no belt to fray, slip off the pulley, or snap during a heavy spin cycle. There's also no electronic load sensor guessing at water levels, and no plastic gears hidden inside a cheap transmission housing, waiting to strip under a heavy comforter load. And if your home runs high water pressure, spend the $40 on a replacement fill hose set with steel braiding instead of the original rubber, which tends to dry rot and crack after 20 or 30 years of constant pressure and daily use. Once you do that one simple upgrade, the machine is basically bulletproof for another full 20 years of daily service without complaint of any kind whatsoever. You can find a clean, working, dependable Care for $50 to $100 at an estate sale, a local online listing, or sometimes just sitting in someone's garage waiting to be hauled away for free because nobody realizes what they actually have sitting right there in front of them, gathering dust. It won't have a touchscreen or an app that tracks your detergent levels for you automatically, and it definitely won't sync with your phone or send you a push notification when the cycle ends. But it will have a simple mechanical timer that's inexpensive to repair if it ever fails, and a motor that simply doesn't burn out from daily use, year after year, decade after decade, the way modern direct drive units sometimes do once the warranty clock runs out and the manufacturer quietly stops caring about you entirely. When you buy one of these machines, you aren't just buying a washer for your home. You're buying genuine freedom from a service contract and a technician's invoice every single time a sensor hiccups for no good reason at all. You're letting the other guys pay $300 for a single repair call on a machine that's practically engineered to fail right after the warranty ends, while you're quietly running the single most dependable piece of machinery in the entire laundry room year in and year out without a second thought ever crossing your mind. Don't let the touchscreen display at the appliance store fool you into thinking newer automatically means better, because in this category, it almost never does and probably never will. Manufacturers know that flashing lights and digital readouts sell floor models, but none of that wiring does a single thing to actually clean your clothes or extend the life of the motor underneath. Simplicity isn't a downgrade here. It's the entire reason these machines keep running long after the fancier ones have been hauled off to the scrapyard. These three machines right here are the only washers I'd personally trust for the long haul without a single second thought about what happens when something eventually breaks down on you when you least expect it to happen.